He is the writer and director of Hot Guys with Guns, as well as From Zero to I Love You, two amazing films. And a lot of us really love him as Chance Counter in the iconic series Noah's Ark. Doug Spearman, how are you?
I was outside playing in the snow. I'm so excited. Like
Yes,
a
snow brings that
nine-year-old.
out of you.
I just recorded a video while I was outside, and the world is going through a lot right now. We're personally, collectively, I just lost in the last 6 months. I've lost two of my best friends, just died suddenly. The political situation, living in the deep south now, and I just wanted to find some happiness. So I think anytime I can grab 5 minutes of just pure bliss, I'm gonna go look for that.
That's a good place to start. When life throws different challenges and curveballs at you, how do you manage those sort of challenges?
About 2007, I was at a party with Shirley MacLaine, who I have loved my entire life. And Shirley said something to all of us. She said, adversity reveals character. Like,
Mm.
you will find out who you are and what you're really made of when things go sideways. And 6 months later, my whole life turned upside down, like really upside down. And you just have to power through this stuff, like take the moments I need to take. I went through a really big breakup in 2016. Like, my whole relationship life just blew up. Like 6 weeks before my wedding, I started meditating 20 minutes a day, and I got up to 40 minutes. And now I meditate every morning about 15 minutes. And I have to do things like that to take care of myself. Recently, I went back into therapy, because
Mm.
I had stuff that I needed to get. I haven't been okay since 2020, to be perfectly honest with you. And, growing up in the middle class and the upper middle class, in and around Washington, D.C., I've had access to things like mental health. But, Black men in particular are not encouraged to take care of their mental health. So all I can do is just go out there and take care of mine. And, there's a quote in the Bible that says, be in the world, but not of the world. Meaning,
Yeah.
like, yeah, I know this stuff is happening, but I don't have to let it steal my peace. And
That's
not that
right.
it doesn't from time to time, but I have built a toolbox of things to do so that I don't get so crazy.
As you've matured, how has your relationship with things like mental health and taking the time to meditate, how has that changed for you?
Well, it's only gotten stronger. I went into therapy for the first time when I was 25. Because my life, what it looked like and what it was so far apart
Hmm.
that it nearly tore me apart. Now, and I've never told anybody this, but when I was 25, I was in a relationship that seemed to be perfect from the outside. Even my parents loved this dude, and my roommate was so mad at me and so jealous he stopped speaking to me, and I hated every moment of it. And I got to a moment one Wednesday night where I I had a break, and I smashed the mirror in this then boyfriend's bathroom, and I was sitting on the floor with a piece of glass, a piece of mirror in my hand, and I was sitting in all this broken glass, and I was just trying to get up the courage to put it in my wrist. And ever since then, I have had to. I didn't, you know, although I have dealt with suicidal ideations for a lot of my 20s, and I have had to take really strong measures about doing that. And for a while, for 9 years, I was on antidepressants, and then one time I was on the lot at Paramount, and I was shooting an AT&T commercial, and I had a panic attack.
Wow.
And I thought I was having a heart attack, the kind of panic attack where your mind tells you you're going to die. And it was so bad that I called SAG to see what my health insurance was, because I thought I was going to have to go to the hospital. And so I know how fragile, a person's mental health can be. And the older I get, the more I have to lean into things like spirituality and meditation and finding a power greater than myself, and helping other people wherever I can.
When we talk about mental health in particular, how do you feel Black gay men are affected by that differently than, say, Black men? Or do you think it's the same?
I mean, there's certain you. I always, this is my opinion. All right, Black trumps gay. Do you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
I'm going to be, like when I walk into a room, you may not know what my sexual orientation is or who I sleep with, but this, you see that when I walk into any room. So yeah, as a Black man, like I always tell people, like I defy you to find a Black man a Black person in this country that isn't angry all the time on some level. With me, sometimes it's a little tiny cold fire, and sometimes it's a raging inferno. Yeah, we're not taught to do that. There are billboards in New Orleans. I think the campaign has ended, but last year and the year before, there were billboards that said featuring a Black kid in a black hoodie in profile. And it was like, it's okay to cry. It's okay to have feelings. It's okay to wear nail polish if you want to. It's okay to be whatever you want to have to be. And when we're at the point where you have to put that on a billboard, that shows you the state of what's going on for us in this country. We're subject to stressors that people don't face. I was talking to a bunch of my white friends over the course of the election cycle, and I was explaining to them that if you look at any protest march, civil rights protest march, I don't care, from the 40s all the way to now, you'll see the same sign repeat itself over and over again. And it's just a guy holding up a sign that says, "I am a man."
Yeah.
Because we spend so much of our time and so much physical, mental, spiritual, and emotional energy just proving that we're human beings. And
Mm.
that's exhausting.
Yeah. Yeah.
Would you say that's true for you?
This sounds horrible. I think I've learned to overlook it. And I think I've learned to overlook it because I haven't had much of a support system other than, really myself. I've had friends and stuff like that, but I have not come from a family that like had my back or a household that had my back. And so in order to get through every day, it's required for me to be as strong as I can. And sometimes that means just putting on a blinder to it and just bulldozing through it.
Yeah. Well, I was extraordinarily fortunate in the fact that the two things that my parents did not screw up were God and sex. My mom, when I was about 7 years old, saw me playing with a wig. Like I was styling one of her wigs on a head, and she was standing there smoking, and she looked at me. She's like, "You're pretty good at that." When you, she's like, "When you're done, why don't you work on mommy's fall?" You know what I mean? And like she's like, "Here, take another one. You're pretty. Keep doing that." And they bought me Barbies, and I always joke because my dad gave me tennis and football gear, and my mom bought me fancy dolls. You know what I mean?
Wow.
And taught me how to sew, and they were always really confused about like the girls that I brought home when I was, like when I had a girlfriend in junior high school or high school. They were like, "What are you doing? And why are you dating this tramp?" You know what I mean? And when I brought guys home, my parents were like, "Yes, finally."
So they knew.
Oh, no, no, no. It wasn't like, I mean, I was, yeah, yeah. Like there was no hiding. I remember when I came out to my brother, took my brother out to lunch, my older brother. And the reason being is that I was in love with this guy named Russ. And I thought he was like, I was 24, 23. And Russ was like, I was gonzo. Like I was just like over the moon. Took me 3 weeks to realize he wasn't perfect.
Yeah.
And I took Billy out to lunch, and he said, "So what do you want to talk about? Because we never have lunch." And I said, I was just hemming and hawing, and I looked up at the sky, and I was like, well, I guess I'm trying to tell you that I'm gay. And he says, but what did you want to talk about?
Wow.
And his first question is like, are you being safe? Because it was the height of the AIDS crisis, and there were no drugs. And I said, yeah, I'm great. And he said, that's not a surprise. We've known since you were 4, you know? So there you go. I mean, but I would support it 100% of the time. It's both ignorance and arrogance on my part that I didn't realize that other gay black men or black gay men didn't have the same kind of support that I did. And I've had to learn how to be really sensitive and listen to their stories and honor their stories, because I had a completely different thing. Hell, I still have Barbies.
You still got Barbies?
Oh yeah, I do. In fact, I have a Julia doll. Like I have a
really?
Oh yeah, hold on. I mean, he sent me this for my birthday, based on Diane Carroll's character.
Diane Carroll.
Yeah, and she's so old that her hair has oxidized. And I remember the 1969 Sears catalog on the very back. This is how important this was. The very back of the Sears catalog had a Julia doll on the back of it, and I coveted that doll forever.
How do you think having a family that was supportive of you, how do you think that affected your journey and ability to accept yourself and sex and all those different things?
Okay, so you have to understand, I'm 62 years old. I mean, I just was. Do you know what I mean? Like, I just was. I mean, I read a lot when I was a kid. I mean, I was very bookish. I have always been predominantly an indoor cat. I'd rather sit by the window and look outside with a stack of books. And my parents didn't have any kind of rule about what I could and could not read, except my mom we had Playboy and Cosmo on the coffee table. And when I was 7, my mom was on the phone at her desk, and there was a reclining chair in front of the desk with the back to her desk. And I pulled out a Playboy, and I was leafing through Playboy, and I was 7 years old, and I reclined the chair, and I had the centerfold open. And as I reclined, it kind of went up into my mom's face. And I remember I just remembered, like, Janie, I got to call you back. And my mom took it away from me. But when I was in junior high school, I would read I learned how to be gay and what gay sex was from reading books.
Wow.
The Dancer from the Dance, and I gave Faggots to my mom when I was 16, Larry Kramer's book. And I read a book when I was in the 8th grade called The Front Runner, which I still think is the most beautiful gay love story ever written. And I really want to make this movie as a director. In fact, I talked to Patricia Nell Warren, who wrote the book, and now the guy who owns the estate. I'm still trying to let them get me the rights for that. And it was so okay for me to read that book about a track coach who falls in love with one of his runners and marries him, that I wrote a book report on it when I was in the 8th grade. And Ms. Wright wrote, "You were very brave," and gave me an A and put 2 gold stars on it. Do you know I was an adult before I realized why she wrote, "You were very brave" on this? Because it was so normal. And a lot of what my parents did for me and the acceptance that I grew up with. And it wasn't even acceptance. It was just normal. Like, I was normal. I was never told I was wrong. I even had a Pentecostal minister for a grandfather. I was never told I was going to hell. I was never told that what I was doing was bad or sinful or anything like that. I mean, I committed a lot of sins, but sex wasn't one of them. My little kleptomania habit when I was a kid was much more of an issue. But I know it's impacted my dating and sex life a lot, because I have stopped seeing guys because they were on the DL. Like, my mom knows. So if your mother doesn't know, I can't go out with you. And if you're too afraid to have that conversation as a grown ass man, for whatever reason, I respect your journey, but we're not going to connect. And so a lot of it has, I'm not interested in somebody who can't live authentically. Like, I wasn't brought up with sex is a sin or sex is wrong or sex is bad. So a lot of that sort of dark behavior that goes around gay gay hookup culture and sex and stuff like that, I'm not interested in, because like, I don't want to, dark rooms terrify me. I'm much more the clean sheets and candles. You know what I mean? I want to look at your
Yeah.
face. I want to look in your eyes.
What is this fascination that we have with DL men?
I think a lot of times people are raised in worlds where it has to be a secret. There is also something very erotic about doing something you're not supposed to do. Do you know what I mean? With people that you're not supposed to be doing it with. I mean, there is something very erotic about the dark. There's something very erotic and interesting about the forbidden. Do you know what I
Yeah.
mean? There's that side of it, but there's also the side that lives in shame and fear and grief and not being able to accept yourself for exactly who you are and saying what it is that you like and what you want.
You think that that also goes for the openly gay men who like DL as well?
Sure. I mean, there's a lot of people are brought up with shame in their family, in their community, in their church, um, and a lot of that has a lot to do with, I think, forcing people into situations. And it's not just, black gay men, white gay. I mean, how many times do you hear about a minister being caught in a motel room, or the choir director being caught in a motel room with a gay prostitute and some drugs? I think that's the way we treat men who are attracted to men in this country.
Thank you for sharing that. So I got to ask you this, you have created two films that they're classics. They're classics. People are still going to be the community's still going to be watching these films. Hot Guys with Guns, classic. From Zero to I Love You. I first saw at a film festival and it was amazing. I remember this guy sitting next to me crying during one of the scenes.
Wow.
What were your processes and inspirations for creating those two films?
Well, the process is always long. So the funny thing about Hot Guys with Guns is Patrick Ian Polk had just made a movie called Punks. And my boyfriend, Ennio, and I had been invited to a bar to go to the cast party or the opening night party. And I hadn't gotten in the movie. I read for Punks, but I didn't get the part. And Ennio and I were standing around this bar, and Jasmine Nichols came in and said hello to me. And Ennio was a hairdresser, and I was acting. And we thought, what would it be like? And we were talking about the TV shows that we loved when we were kids, like Cannon and Mannix and all these TV detective shows from the 70s and 80s. And we thought, wouldn't it be great to have a gay version of this? And we started. The kernel of the idea came standing in that bar. We were talking about what it would be like to be two boyfriends who were solving mysteries and crimes. And then years later, I was driving up Vine Street in LA. And, in the fall, they put up the new billboards for the new TV shows, right? Mm-hmm. And if you look at any detective show or movie, and it's usually two guys, a white guy and a black guy, standing in front of a vintage car, holding guns, right? And the white guy is always overlapping the black guy. The white guy's always in front. And I was just driving up. I was like, ugh, another one. Two hot guys with guns. And I was just like, that's a great title. And then I started writing it. And originally, Pip was a hairdresser. And then I took him out of that because I got some notes. So that's where that came from. And From Zero to I Love You was originally a novel that I wrote when I first got to LA called Welcome Sinners. And the movie started shooting as Welcome Sinners, but I wrote I started the book in 92 and I finished the second or third draft around 97. And part of my journey as a gay man and my self-esteem journey, as I have found out, has that so when I was a kid, all of my life, older men have been attracted to me. You know what I mean? Like that, and it was a problem. It was a real problem. As a matter of fact, at Christmas time, I posted a picture of me sitting on Santa's lap. And I showed that picture to my therapist, and she pointed out, like, that's a wrong picture. Like the way that the Santa is holding me. And like, if you go look at my Facebook page and go look, you'll see it. Like if you go to look at like my ID pictures, and I mean, like it's wrong. The picture is wrong. And college professors and teachers in high school and we're always paying way too much attention, and sometimes that attention would get physical, you know. And I ended up getting molested, and that when you're sexualized really early, you look for attention wherever you're going to get it, and a lot of times it came from married men. And I had a long unfortunate history of, you know, being some married dude side piece, you know, to put it bluntly. And I wanted to try to fix it. So I wanted to try to understand it from both sides. So I wrote Welcome Sinners from both Jack, the married guy side, and Peter, the black guy side. And I wrote it, and then I decided, wonder if I could write a screenplay. So I said, instead of writing something new, I'll adapt this book. So I turned it in 98. I wrote the first draft of the screenplay, and it took me 20 years to get it done.
We'll definitely be, you know, keeping our eye out for your next project, because we love projects that you write and direct.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
Thank you. I really appreciate that.
We gotta talk about it. Chance Counter, Noah's Ark. How did you get involved with Noah's Ark?
If you still have a DVD player and you watch the season 1 DVDs, our auditions are on there. And I had met Patrick because I auditioned for Punks and didn't get it. I was his number 2 choice. And I didn't get the role. And he called me in a couple years later to read for, I read for Ricky.
Really?
We all read for different parts. And yeah, I read for Ricky. And when I read the script, you know, like, it wasn't like apps, but there was Adam for Adam, and there was, you know, there was a lot of online things. And the scene that I read was Ricky, you know, looking at somebody's computer, and I think he was on Adam for Adam or something like that. And I understand what that sort of hyper vigilant, like, you can't get off an app, you can't, like, you're just scrolling and you're looking and it becomes a thing. So I saw it as a much darker thing. And I like much more sort of, I'd say, less fantastic, less fantasy. Do you know what I mean? So I think my original Ricky audition is on that DVD. And but he had me go out and then come back and read, what was his name? His name is Solomon. Chance's original name was Solomon. And Noah's Ark's original title was Hot Chocolate.
Yes.
I read for Solomon, and then I went to see Punks with Patrick and some guys, and we went to a Mexican restaurant. And afterwards with Patrick, and I was sitting across the table from this guy who's an opera singer and an actor. And Patrick turned to us and said, "You guys are down. It's down to the 2 of you for this role." And I'm like, okay, that was odd. I mean, like, I'm sitting here looking across the table at the guy who could get the part, and we're eating Mexican food. I'm like, never had a director tell me that. And then Patrick needed a ride to a party at our friend Brixton's house, and I picked him up. And he said, "Oh, by the way, you didn't get it. But I'm going to write something for you. I hope, are you open to that?" I'm like, "Yeah, well, we'll see what happens when you write it." And I'm like, "Well, thanks for telling me.
Right.
Glad I'm giving you a ride to this party." And then a couple months later, no, like 6 months later, I was on my way to New York with my then boyfriend for the weekend, for like a 4-day weekend. And Patrick called and said that they had to replace that guy that he'd given the part to. And he had to, they were going to shoot this weekend, and could I do it? And I was like, I'm going to New York. I'm not going to be here, sorry. And he called me again, and he called me again. And I flew to New York, and he had left like 4 voicemails. And in one of the voicemails, and I remember it was 11 o'clock, it was Friday night, we had just gotten to JFK. I'm standing in the luggage, in the baggage claim, and I got Patrick on the phone back in LA, and he explained who Chance was. And the thing that changed my mind and made me want to do it was the fact that Chance was with Eddie, and they had a 4-year-old daughter named Kenya. And I had never seen, first of all, 2 black men in a long committed relationship, and I'd never seen 2 black men raise a child.
Mm-hmm.
Certainly not on TV. And I thought it was the most, what's the word, radical thing I could imagine doing. Certainly the most like volatile, political. I mean, it's so subtle, but it was the first time 2 men in a relationship were given agency over a child. And I remember turning to Josh and going, you know what? I think I kind of want to do this. Do you mind flying home on Monday morning? Can we go back Monday morning? He said, I think you should do this. Yeah, let's do it. And it's the reason no, Josh is the reason for the facial hair. But so I flew home Monday and went right from LAX to the place where they were shooting, and met Jonathan in this bedroom because we had to take a bath together. That was the first time I met Jonathan Julian, who played Eddie. And we met putting on swimsuits in this bedroom somewhere in West LA. And we then spent 3 hours in a bathtub with me sitting on his lap,
Wow.
Talking about football, talking about the Saints and, Chargers and stuff like that, because Jonathan's straight. And, I'm just like, here we go. And we were in the tub for about 3 hours.
How did you connect to this character?
Not at all. In fact, my biggest problem was the fact that I didn't like it's hard to play somebody you don't like. And it's something that I teach my acting students all the time. I think Chance made a lot of choices out of loneliness and out of fear. You know what I mean? So I had a really hard time. I had to figure out reasons to justify Chance's behavior. Very different. I mean, like, I identified with Ricky. Oh yeah. I completely identified with Ricky. I understood Ricky inside and out. Why Ricky was so hypersexual. I mean, that constant sort of hunting behavior.
Yeah.
I really understood that. That's the character of all of the big 4, Alex, Ricky, Chance, and Noah. And, I understood Ricky. I learned a lot from Chance because Chance had a friend group that was very different from mine. I mean, Chance had a sense of community that I tend to be, I have a lot of friends. I have friendships that go back to high school elementary school. I have 40 and 50-year friendships. But Chance had a friend group that was very different from mine, and a sense of community that was very different from mine. And I remember, see, here's the thing. You got to use as an actor, I've been taught to use my life as the basis for things. And I remember being really mad one night because I had to get on a plane and fly to Philadelphia for what would be my last weekend as the creative director for ABC Daytime, because I was doing 2 jobs at the same time, shooting the show, and I was working at ABC, and my mom had just died. And I was so filled with uncertainty and grief, and I I was getting pressure from ABC and Logo to pick one. And I was just really, so there's that scene where Chance confronts Eddie while Eddie's cooking. And that was just all personal frustration and grief. It was all it wasn't coming from Chance at all. I mean, it had nothing to do with Chance. It was just Doug screaming. Do you know what I mean? Using those words. I mean, I've gotten more comfortable with him, but relating to him, I mean, like, again, his choices are very different from mine. Chance is, he's got a grown daughter and this relationship with Eddie, and he's a college professor. I mean, like, Chance settled down.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? In a way that I don't know if I'll ever do, or
Really?
am really interested in.
When we talk about this show, because it really had a very significant impact on our community, in your opinion, what do you think about the show caused Black gay men to resonate so deeply?
When you see yourself finally reflected back in the culture that you live in, it's like glory, hallelujah. I remember seeing Star Wars where, there was the trailer for the Star Wars, and that and it was it's David. I'm not going to butcher his beautiful last name, but he's a stormtrooper, and it was the teaser trailer, and the stormtrooper wakes up in the desert in the sand, and he whips his helmet off, and it's a Black 20-year-old who looked exactly like me when I was 18, 19, and 20. And I was like, oh my God, I exist. I mean, like, I'm part of that now. And
Yeah.
when Black men, especially Black gay men, saw themselves finally in 6 guys who were out there living life and had support and community and love and faced challenges, and it was like suddenly it validates your existence in a way that I think is necessary as a member of a culture and a people. I mean, I was here in New Orleans, and this guy, I was getting in the car from the grocery store, and the guy was like, excuse me, and he knocked on my glass. I'm like, oh my God. And he had told me that he had dropped out of school, and then he saw Noah's Ark, and he identified with Chance so much that he went back to college, and now he's a doctor. He's a medical doctor. And he saw that happened because he saw Noah's Ark when he was 15. Went back to school, went to college, went to medical school, and became a doctor because of the show. That to me says it all right there.
I gotta ask this. That show carried Logo. It was 100%, I would dare to even say, one of the most popular shows on cable television. Why do you think it didn't get more support from the network or even the mainstream?
There are a billion different reasons. I mean, you want to read something interesting, go back and look at the second weekend, like, if you can find a copy of Entertainment Magazine or Entertainment Weekly from the week that the show came out, you should read the review of the show. I think as much as a lot of people could identify with it, I think a lot of people couldn't. I used to get questions at the gym. Daryl and I would laugh about this all the time. We'd get white guys walking up to us like, well, why aren't one of you dating a white guy? Because a lot of white men, especially white gay men, do not understand a universe in which they do not exist. It's like, what? You know what I mean? And it's like, why couldn't there be a white guy? I don't know. It's Patrick's show. And guess what? There are spaces where you guys aren't in. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And that really, I think, Logo tried to be everything to all, everybody on, our alphabet chain, right? But, there are Black men who don't care about white gay men and aren't attracted to them. There are certainly white men who aren't attracted to Black men. And like, I always say it both, like, nobody makes movies for Asian men, except for Asian men. Do you know what I mean? It's like we fetishize so much, and if you're not attracted to it, you're not going to watch it.
Right.
If you're not attracted to the characters, you're not going to watch the people. You're not going to watch the show. Do you know what I mean? So I think that had a lot to do with it. Also, I mean, average. Look, TV is all about it. It's not about the viewers. It's never about the audience, except when it relates to, are these the kind of people that the advertisers want to sell products to?
Mm-hmm.
That's it. I think we had Subaru and American Airlines, and that was it. There was not a whole lot of advertising support behind that. Logo only had so much money. So in order to try to put more shows on, they had to take, this show could get 2 years, then they had to do this show, then they had to do this show with the same money, but that money was shrinking every season, which is why they stopped doing, after like year 3 or 4, they stopped doing original program. It's about dollars. And whether the audience is perceived well enough to, or like, do they have the kind of disposable income that's going to let them buy the stuff that's on the show?
Yeah.
And you tell me, like, think back 20 years, think about, the average gay black man in the United States. I mean, who's openly gay, right? What kind of life are they living? How much money are they making? What jobs do they have? I mean, it's different now because you look at Instagram and you see a lot of black gay couples, and you see a lot of black gay middle and upper middle class couples, or you see a lot of people who want to at least project that lifestyle.
So we're still not perceived as being a market that
not gays aren't even a market. White gay men are the market. Pose isn't on the air, and Pose was really the trans story for all intents and purposes. Even P Valley.
Yeah.
Right? But name me a gay black character on a television show or in a movie in the last 4 years.
There is the Upshaws. There are a couple on there on Netflix, but that's about it that comes to mind.
That tells you everything.
Black gay visibility. Why is it important?
Because if they don't know we're here, they don't know what we need and what we want, and that we matter, and that we have played a part in every part of this part of American history. Bayard Rustin, last year's movie about Bayard Rustin. So important, and not enough people saw it. Like we're always part of something, but we get shoved off to the side. I mean, that's why if we're not visible in the entire spectrum that we exist in, including guys who are on the DL and those who are, wearing a thong and dancing on the street, any day of the week. You know what I mean? Like, I've got friends like that.
Yeah.
I mean, DL the Go-Go Boy. I mean, like, Don Lemon, me, some dude in a trap house, taking loads from 6 different guys right now. And, stripper, we all matter. We all matter, and we all have to take our place. I always used to think Pride would be great if everybody who identified as gay, lesbian, bisexual, transgender just got up one day from their office and we all just stood silently in the street and didn't move. I think that would be a much more powerful statement, then you could actually see who we are. There was a story about ancient Rome. There was at one point, the Romans thought about putting all their slaves in the exact same outfit, making them all wear the exact same thing, like a uniform. And one senator said to the other, "We can't do that." And the other said, "Why?" It's like, then they would know how strong they are and how many there are, and they could overpower us. So if you do that to any marginalized group, if we could all come together and understand and meet each other, we would have an understanding, and we would understand how powerful and mighty we actually are.